Hey everyone, my name is Jay Sable. I'm the founder of One Community, and this is my first open source blog, and it's kind of on a subjective topic, but I wanted to share the process of creating One Community because one of our team, Tony, is going through a very similar process with the Occupy movement. And so I just wanted to share the commonalities between our two processes and what we've learned from that, because it might be useful for other people in leadership positions that are also trying to create something magical and beautiful and change. Um, for me, the One Community Project has been a 15-year process of getting to where we are right now. Actually, it's 16 years now. And just in the last year, I've put in over 2,400 hours into this project. And Tony's going through the same thing. His process started with the Occupy movement only maybe a month ago, but since the beginning of realizing, like, hey, we want to create something that's founded on peaceful demonstration and protest and love and nonviolence and non-destruction of property and principles that seem to be violated by the few within the Occupy movement, but it's giving the entire movement a bad name. And the One Community Project is the same way. The idea is we're creating a new way to live that demonstrates consensus governing, sustainable living, alternative energy use, communal style living, a social architecture, an educational architecture, and all these different ways of thinking that's not trying to change the current system. It's actually trying to create an entirely new way of living and a new paradigm and making the old one obsolete. So the whole idea is rather than rail against the current system, we want to create a new version and just say, hey, this is what we're doing, and if people agree with that, then they can come on board and follow that. And the interesting thing about that is part of the new system being about fairness and equality and wanting to include everybody. You run into an interesting challenge in the beginning stages when you need a really clear vision and a really cohesive group to pull the whole thing off. And at the same time, you have these values of like hearing everybody speak and fairness and freedom and consensus governing. And that kind of those foundations that don't necessarily work in the beginning stages. And it's really interesting going, well, here we want to create this amazing thing, and the goal is not to be a leader of a movement, but to be a part of a team that's moving in a direction. Like, that's my goal, is how can I be part of a cohesive team that are all thinking the same things, like moving in this direction and creating world change, and at the same time, that team needs leadership. And so the process that I went through and the process that Tony is going through have been exactly the same. And that's what I want to share. And the process is essentially this. Somebody has an idea for creating change, and they're really clear, and they think a lot about it, and they put a whole bunch of time and energy into it, and like, okay, I want to create, change, or I want to create an organization, or I want to create a company, or I want to create a community, in the case of One Community, that's focused on some basic principles. And then through the whole process going, oh, I want to create this, you realize that there are specific principles that need to be outlined. Like for me, when I started One Community, we didn't have a community pledge of higher consciousness living or principles that we were adhering to. I had those principles within me: honesty, integrity, transparency, love and connection, personal growth, these kinds of things. They were within me, but they hadn't been laid out specifically for the organization. Communication is a big one. And so in the process of saying, hey, let's create this amazing thing, all of a sudden, all these differing views coming into it, and hearing that makes you realize, like, whoa, I need to get clear on exactly what it is. Like, oh, how important is consensus governing? Well, it's essential. So we need to put that in as something that we value. How important is honesty? Well, it's essential. How important is open acceptance of other people and just who they are and their and differing views and diversity? Well, that's important. And so you put that in. And so first you have an idea, and then through people communicating with you and exploring that idea with your team or other people or sharing it with people, you get to clarify, like, what are the values the principles that we want to stand on. And this is exactly what Tony's going through. And then after that, the next step that was experienced that was really interesting, and that was kind of a rough period because there were people that were like, well, why do we have to have a pledge? You know, how strict are we? Are we monitoring each other? Who are we to tell other people what to do, etc.? And the learning experience from all that was realizing like, whoa, wait a minute. This sounds like we're forcing somebody to adhere to a set of values. And that's absolutely not the case. Instead, what we're saying is, these are the set of values that I adhere to, and I'm interested in other people that adhere to the same set of values. And for Tony, that's values of peace and love and walking softly in a protesting way and not destroying other people's property and respecting each other and honoring the process, etc. Same thing for one community. And so in that process of saying, hey, these are the values, it was also a process of communicating to the entire team like, hey, double check and make sure that this works for you. Like, double check that this is actually what you want to do. Like, hey, we want to live to these higher values. And then the process of trusting myself, as we evolved those values, we discussed it, and there were times when I needed to say, no, we're not going to create a spiritual leadership council. We're going to govern by consensus. And yes, at the same time, like, we need a rollout process of the consensus format over a period of 2 or 3 months so that we can work together cohesively and get decisions done. And so a majority rule voting process of like a 70%, and then we go to a 90% before we go to complete consensus. And so it's that process of going, okay, hey, there's steps that need to be taken. Initially, we need leadership. The goal is complete fairness and equality in an environment where we don't have to monitor each other, where everything's cohesive. But everybody knows it's ever gone, that's worked in teams and things like that, until you prove that you can work cohesively, you need something in place to make sure that everybody's doing their part. And so that's the next step. First, you have your idea. Second, you have your process, your values, like, hey, this is what the idea, this is what we're creating, like, here's a clarification of what it is. And then the third one is a process of seeing that you actually have the right people to pull it off. And that's really been huge. And this is the process that we're in right now with One Community, is going, okay, I had this beautiful idea. We put it together. We said, okay, here's our beautiful idea. Then this is what it looks like. These are the values that we're adhering to. And now everybody that said, yeah, we adhere to those values, well, there's specific things that need to be done to move us all forward. And so we need to make sure that we have the people that are willing and ready to do those specific things. The people that are saying, okay, yeah, I'm not just ready, but I'm actually taking action. And so the next step is that. It's like, okay, now you have this series of action items and an accountability model for people to monitor themselves. And the point of the accountability model is not to say, hey, I'm checking up on you. Like, I want to make sure you're doing what you need to do. The point of the accountability model is to see that people are accountable to themselves, that people are accountable without monitoring. Because when you're creating a movement, an organization, a company, you don't want to be the person who has to sit there and monitor everybody and say, hey, is everybody doing it? Oh, you didn't do your part. No, you want an organization of people that do their part already. They're like, hey, I see the vision. Let's create it. Let's work together. And then you get to be a member of the team. And so that has been the 3-step process that we're going through. And it is amazing. Like, it's amazing that Tony's going through the exact same process. So the Occupy movement started. It kind of went in a direction that he didn't want to go, just like One Community idea was there, and the world has gone in a direction where it's like, this is interesting. I think we could do something different. And Tony said, hey, we could do something different. And I said, hey, we could do something different. And I said, this is what that looks like. And Tony said, this is what that looks like. And then a bunch of people said, yeah, that sounds really great. Let's do that. Yes, let's move in a direction. And then you get a certain way down the path and people are like, well, what about this? Oh, I don't know about your idea. I'm not really sure if that works. I think we should do this. And that's the clarification process. And both myself and Tony had to go, okay, what's important here? Because I can't leave my own organization. So it's either, hey, this is beautiful and you folks can take this and create something different because I'm going in a different direction, or it's, I'm doing this and who's with me? Like, who likes this idea? And so that step is like the creation of values. And so second step is you need to create a set of values and be solid on your values. Doesn't mean you can't evolve them and change them, but really sit down and decide, what is it that I want? You know, what's the deal breaker? Because everybody can leave any organization or company, but if you're the person starting a movement, starting a company, starting an organization, you can't run away from your own organization. So getting really clear on what it is that you want, and this would apply to relationships as well, I would say is really important, because you're forming a relationship with your team. And it's like, hey, these are the values. I'm committing to being held to these. And in this way, by putting them out there and making it clear, you guys can call me on it. We all get to grow and evolve. And so that was step 2. And then step 3 is creating some sort of system so that people can demonstrate that they're actually ready to move in the direction that you're moving, that they're actually willing to put in the time and the energy, and they're not just saying like, hey, this sounds really good. And that piece right there is essential, because one person in an organization that's really powerfully organized and moving in the same direction, that doesn't see the vision and is just interested in going in a different direction, can bleed energy off of the entire organization. Like, it becomes a drain on all the people moving in the same direction. Like, think about it. Have you ever been a part of a group or a team and it's like, yeah, let's do this, and one person is like, I just don't want to do that, you know, I'm not sure, questioning the values, questioning the direction that you're moving, etc. Is it good to have that diversity? Yes. And at the same time, if the goal is to get a lot of things done, if the goal is to really create movement, people in general saying, okay, well, if the majority of the group wants to go in a direction, even if it's a different direction than I want to go, that's okay. Then I'm going to go in that direction. It's that behavioral flexibility in all of us that allows us to come together and work as a cohesive group. But if one person is going to stand on principle, even though the rest of the group doesn't want to go in that, wants to go in a specific direction, that's going to create problems within your group. And so the idea is to create like some sort of accountability measure where people can hold themselves accountable and show and demonstrate that they're ready to step up and become a part of whatever it is that you're creating. And this is exactly what the Wall Street movement, the Occupy Wall Street movement that Tony's involved in, is going through right now. And it's fascinating. You know, it's like a lot of people just want to stand around and smoke pot and do nothing. And they're like, hey, we want to create something. Like, we want to create something magical and world-changing, and you guys are diluting our message. Like, you're draining energy from the rest of us. Or, you know, everybody's like, hey, we want to do this, you know, this peaceful movement, and somebody's like yelling obscenities at the police, and they're like, hey, you're making us all look bad. And then they go, well, let's create something different. And those folks still want to join into it. They want, well, we want to be a part of that. We're like, well, these are our values and our principles, you know, and this is the direction that we're going. And those folks are like, well, everybody should be a part of it. And it's like, that's kind of gotten us where we are. So we're interested in people moving in the same direction. And so that's it. That's what I wanted to share with this video. I think it's fascinating, the 3-step process of idea, crystallization of the idea, and all this, you know, questioning of what it is, and hey, what about this, that clarifies it, and then the person that's created the idea being the one that's talked to all those differing views, having the most insight into it, saying, okay, well, these are the values then that I hear that we want to represent, and putting that down and really committing to them, and then having the group commit to that, say, hey, nobody has to commit to this, but this is what we're creating. Is this the party you want to join? Because this is the party we're going to throw. And then the next step is like, okay, we've all said that this is the party that we want to throw. Now it's time to start organizing and making sure that it happens, because part of the party we want to throw is having people the right people that get things done and that are motivated and excited enough about the party to really come together as a group and create it. And from that place, the party will happen. And those 3 pieces have been demonstrated now through my experience, by Tony's experience. I can think of business owners and stuff that I've talked to that have experienced the same thing. I think it's brilliant in its simplicity. And anyway, that's what I wanted to share. So hopefully that was helpful. If you want to see like our pledge and the information that I'm talking about, check out onecommunityranch.org. That's our website. If you like what I'm saying, if you like open source information, please like this video, share it with people, yeah, thanks for checking us out. Take care.